Welcome to MMA on the Rocks. My name is Bill Welker, and you are listening to episode 134 of the podcast. Today is Sunday, March the 31st. Man, March came and went just like that. And joining me from the upper section of the United States, back after a week off, but it seems like much longer than that because we've done a couple episodes in the meantime. Please welcome back Jeff, the Animal Wilson. Jeff, how you feel on this early Sunday afternoon, my friend?
Bill, I feel great to be back. It's been too long. I've missed this, Bill. It just doesn't feel like a week if we're not talking MMA on YouTube for the thousands of followers that we have to hear our voices.
Yeah, man. Yeah, the fans have been clamoring for more Animal. If you guys are wondering why this is episode 134, if you're used to always downloading the episode on Sunday or on Monday, I know a lot of people do enjoy that Monday morning commute, which is why we always try to post by Sunday night, the latest. There was an extra episode in between last Sunday and this episode right now. I had an interview with UFC lightweight Matt Steamroller Frivola. So that's episode 133. So after you're finished with this one, if you still got an extra commute and you're stuck in traffic or you're just pretending to do stuff at work, please do go back and check that one out. Matt will be fighting Jalen Turner in 2 weeks at UFC 236 in Atlanta, Georgia. Jeff the Animal Wilson will be here watching it in person with me. We're going to do some kind of live show for that one. So Jeff, how you feeling, man? I mean, we got a week off from UFC, and then you're going to be here on vacation. I know you had a lot of shit going on in your life, but you know, we get a little breather from the UFC next week, and then you're going to be soaking up the sunshine. How's that feel?
Bill, I'm super excited to go out there and visit you. It's been a little chilly the last couple of days. Yesterday was the first teaser of spring that we had, so it was really nice. But, Bill, I'm excited for some Florida sunshine, work on my tan a little bit. I can walk around in shorts all day, so I'm excited for that. And, Bill, I think that the reason that there's no MMA next weekend is because next weekend is WrestleMania. That's Sunday, which I'm actually going to be attending. It's in New Jersey. It's at MetLife Stadium. So I'm very excited, Bill. I'm not as big a wrestling fan as I was when I was a little kid, but it's always been a childhood dream of mine to go to WrestleMania and be there in person. And part of that dream, Bill, is making sure that nobody behind me can see. So I'm going to have a giant poster that says the guy behind me can't see. So if you see that on camera, you know where I'm at, Bill.
You should hold up a giant poster that says subscribe to MMA on the Rocks is what you should do.
Actually, that's not a bad idea. That's actually the people who can't see can subscribe to the podcast, because I'll have that on the back of the sign.
Yeah, I mean, you're paying all this money for a ticket. You might as well get some promotion out of it, and let's get some subscribers that maybe want to hear about like actual fighting.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, as much as I like WrestleMania, I'll probably never go to another one because it's not real fighting. But it's something to knock off my bucket list, so I'm super excited.
There you go, kid. All right, I'm excited for you then. All right, the other thing I was excited for was the main event last night. Now, I did not get to watch UFC on ESPN2 from the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia live last night because I was attending a party. I actually went to a speakeasy last night, Jeff. It was a pretty cool experience. It was a birthday party, and it's the kind of thing like you have to have a password to get in, and then you get in. They got burlesque dancers and all this stuff, and pretty cheap drinks too, which was nice. I mean, it's not 1920s prices, but didn't put too much of a dent in the wallet. But speaking of dents, Justin Gaethje and Edson Barbosa put some dents in each other's legs last night. And I think that's what a lot of people were looking forward to, was a battle of the leg kicks. And we certainly got it. And I think Justin Gaethje won that battle before he won the war with Edson Barbosa. And I think a lot of the dialogue was that Justin Gaethje should use his wrestling against Edson Barbosa and not try and stand and brawl with him. But what he did was lure Barbosa into his fight style, which is that brawling style, which is not where Barbosa is his strongest. Now, he did use a little bit of wrestling, and if you're wondering what I'm talking about, because the fight never hit the ground, so that first uppercut, that first clean uppercut that Justin Gaethje landed, he landed it because he used a wrestling collar tie to pull Edson Barbosa into the uppercut, which is why it wobbled him so much. It wasn't just the velocity of that uppercut, which was a lot. He was actually pulling his head down into it. It was a beautiful strike. And then he was, holding him up against the cage a little bit. So we did get to see a small glimpse of Justin Gaethje's All-American wrestling background, which you would never know this guy had if you've seen any of his recent fights. But yeah, that was a lot of the dialogue, but he was able to, pull Barbosa into a brawl, and Justin Gaethje did what Justin Gaethje does, and getting that big knockout in the first round. Give me your thoughts on this main event, Jim.
Yeah, Bill, I was really impressed with Justin Gaethje because he did implement his brawling style, but at the same time, there was a lot of technique in there, Bill. I loved the use of the clinch. It was neutralizing Barbosa's knees. He couldn't get those flashy kicks off, so I thought this was a really good strategy. Gaethje was in his face, and not only was he landing leg kicks, but, Bill, there was a lot of times where Gaethje was in a range where he could just step out from Barbosa's leg kicks. All he had to do was take one step back, and Barbosa would miss a couple of those leg kicks. So I really enjoyed seeing how patient Justin Gaethje was. This was a masterclass from Justin Gaethje, not only implementing his brawling style, but being pretty patient in there, using his head movement a lot to keep Barbosa guessing. This was a great performance from Justin Gaethje. He was as crazy and violent as his style is. Last night, he looked really methodical, Bill. And if he can keep fighting like that, I think he's going to get he's going to stop taking so many hard shots. I didn't see him get hit too hard in this one. There was probably one really stiff shot from Barbosa. Everything else didn't have too much behind it because Gaethje kept moving. So I think that was a very, very dangerous Justin Gaethje, and I want to see him keep doing stuff like that against some of the higher-ups in this lightweight division.
Yeah, for sure. I would actually like to see Justin Gaethje against more of a grappler just to see how he does, because we've only seen him fight guys that are willing to stand and bang with him. I mean, he fought Michael Johnson, but Michael Johnson didn't try and wrestle. Much like Michael Johnson didn't try and wrestle last night. Yeah, that's what I would like to see. But I think what will be next for Justin Gaethje is the winner of the Al Iaquinta and Donald Cowboy Cerrone fight. He already kind of laid the groundwork for that, saying, why did Cerrone get to cut me in line? He wasn't even ranked in this division, and he gets to fight with Al Iaquinta. And I get him being frustrated about that, but I don't think Justin Gaethje walked into the UFC and hasn't fought less than a co-main event since he got here. So it's not like he's been treated poorly, and he just took out a really tough guy. I mean, it's an unfortunate thing for Edson Barbosa here, because here's a fucking killer. I mean, sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night, Jeff, and I yell, "Stop the fight," because I'm thinking about him abusing Dan Hooker. And and then I remember that it's all over, that Rob Hines actually did call an end to that fight.
That's just so funny. Oh, man.
But Edson Barbosa, man, a fucking killer. And I would like to see him take on the loser of that Al Iaquinta Cowboy Cerrone fight. And I think any way you match these four fighters up, you're going to have fireworks, and you're going to have easily a main or co-main event. For the loser fight, I hate to call it that, but for the fight between the two guys who lost, probably a co-main event. You could have it on the same card for all I care. I mean, think about that. Any way you line that up, Iaquinta versus Gaethje, awesome. Cowboy versus Gaethje, awesome. Iaquinta versus Barbosa, awesome. Cowboy versus Barbosa, awesome. There's no wrong way for that to work out. Give me your thoughts, Jeff.
Bill, I like it, but I got to throw in another monkey wrench here, Bill.
All right.
I want to see Justin Gaethje fight the winner of Kevin Lee versus Rafael dos Anjos. I think that fight is fireworks.
But keep in mind that fight is at welterweight, Jeff.
Oh, is it? I thought they were fighting at 155. All right. But wait, is Cowboy versus Alaquinta gonna be at 155? Wasn't Cowboy at welterweight for a bit?
He was, which is why everything's confusing, which is why we really need this 165-pound division, because you have so many guys going up and down. Pettis going up and down. Just make the 165 division. I mean, it would really make things a lot clearer. Especially like for two guys like us who follow the sport so closely, you would think it would be a little bit easier, but no, these guys have to keep moving up and down because of that 15-pound weight gap. So they need to fix that. Again, I just feel for Edson Barbosa here, man. I mean, dropped 3 of his last 4, but still one of the deadliest guys on the planet. He just happens to be in such a stacked fucking division. And,
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. I would like to see him, get his legs back under him. He's going to need some time off after such a vicious KO. So maybe even the loser of Cowboy Iaquinta would be a little bit too soon for him. But I would like to see Barbosa, on the upswing, just because, he's not a trash talker. He's a really flashy striker. He's got excellent takedown defense. And yeah, I don't know. And then this division is so crazy, Jeff, because you might have Pettis coming back down. Pettis called out the winner of last night's fight, and who knows if that'll happen. Anthony Pettis versus Justin Gaethje would be a fun fight too. So a lot of monkey wrenches everywhere. And then Tony Ferguson, who knows when he'll be back, but when he is, insert him into the mix. And then we got the up and comers like Steamroller Frivola, who I interviewed yesterday. He'll be up there in the conversation soon too. It's just such a crazy division, and it's really awesome. It's a really awesome time to be a fan of the UFC. So the co-main event, another quick one, 49 seconds. Armin guillotine for Jack the Joker Hermansson over Renzo Gracie, black belt David Branch. And I have to make that distinction, Jeff, because Renzo Gracie doesn't just pass out black belts like he's running a candy shop. That is actually a very elite black belt to have. If you think about some of the world-class grapplers who have black belts under Renzo Gracie, Ricardo Almeida, Matt Serra, the list goes on and on. Jack Hermansson with a beautiful Armin guillotine setup, and this is like a go-to setup for him. I believe he hit it on Gerald Meerschaert in his last fight. It was something very similar. And man, 49 seconds, they were still dry. Nowhere for David Branch to go. He turned the wrong way. He didn't get his back to the mat, and he paid for it with a quick tap. And I was saying last week, Jeff, that David Branch is a guy, like, you never really know what you're going to get. Maybe he's going to come out and starch a guy in 30 seconds, and then maybe he's going to get dominated. It seems to be that hot and cold for him since coming to the UFC. Give me your thoughts on this co-main event, Jeff.
Bill, I thought Jack Hermansson looked phenomenal in this fight. The way he got David Branch to the ground was ridiculous. He went for a double, and it looked like he didn't fully commit to the double leg because he rode up David Branch, got an underhook and an overhook, and started pushing up from the underhook and pulling down on the overhook, and lands this beautiful leg trip, Bill. It was just such a beautiful takedown. I had to go back and watch it 4 or 5 times just because I wanted to see how he set it up, how he did it. I want to try and land this on somebody in training. But from there, David Branch starts getting up, and immediately Hermansson starts throwing that arm over the shoulder and neck, and he just has to pull Branch down. Beautiful technique from Jack Hermansson. If you're a grappler, definitely go and check this out. There was actually a lot of good grappling on this entire card, at least the main card anyway. And Bill, I think you're right with David Branch, man. I don't know what you do with him at this point. This is his second run in the UFC, and this is probably his third loss in like 4 fights in the UFC. Something ridiculous like that. So I don't know, man. I think David Branch is on thin ice right now.
Yeah, you would think. And here's a guy who came in with so much momentum. He's dropped 3 of his last 4. So yeah, he's kind of in the same boat as Edson Barbosa. And I mean, if you look at the guys he's fought, I mean, he does have a knockout win over Thiago Santos, who's on the verge of fighting for the title, a weight class up right now. You know, a loss to Luke Rockhold, that's nothing to hang your head about. Jared Cannonier, he's really killing it right now since moving to 185. So I think maybe a little bit of time off. I think probably a ride back down to the prelims for David Branch. Um, it, you know, there are some matchups for him. As far as Jack Hermanson, I think probably the winner of Elias Theodorou and Derek Brunson would be a good test for him, and would help him move up the ladder a little bit. I think he's ready. I don't think that would be rushing anything too much. Um, and yeah, I think that's what's on the horizon for him. Any thoughts on that, Jeff?
Yeah, but I think you're right. I think that's a really good test for him. Whoever wins that fight, Theodorou's no slouch, really well rounded, and Derek Brunson, really high level wrestler. I actually kind of want to see him fight Derek Brunson and see how their grappling matches up. Bill, I was going to add a thought, and then oh yeah. So Bill, before we go any further, just real quick, some BJPenn.com news. I try to check it when I have a break at work, and you're right. So Thiago Santos is going to fight John Jones for the light heavyweight championship, and on the same card, I want to say that's UFC 239. Don't quote me on that. It's UFC 230 something.
Whatever
But it
that
is.
International Fight Week card is, yeah.
Yeah, that one. So Jones is going to be fighting Thiago Santos, which I'm really excited for, and then Amanda Nunes is putting up one of her two belts, her 135-pound belt, against Ali Holm. That's probably going to be a co-main event on that card. Bill, this fight week card is shaping up to be really exciting. Those two fights alone are probably worth your money if you're going to order that pay-per-view.
Yeah, or maybe we can get a plane ticket to Vegas, Jeff. What do you say? It's summertime. You're going to be off from work. Let's get out there and cover this thing.
Yeah, I'm game for that, Bill. Let's do it.
All right, yeah, maybe the UFC will hook us up with some tickets. So, yeah, those are all exciting matchups, and it was kind of weird because there was some news floating around that John Jones was going to fight Stipe. He even tweeted it himself, like maybe Stipe and I will fight in July. I don't think you guys are ready for it yet, and I think that was the UFC kind of testing the waters through the voice of John Jones. And my guess is that Stipe got wind of it and turned it down because it seems like Stipe wants the title or nothing, and he's been settling for nothing for a long time. So I would really love to see Stipe get back in there. I guess it's just, anything short of a championship isn't going to whet his appetite enough to get him, off the couch or off the fire truck, so to speak. So let's get back to UFC on ESPN2 and the featherweights, Josh Emmett and Michael Johnson. And this was a really close contest that Michael Johnson was probably edging out fairly handily. You never know with the judging in MMA, Jeff, because Emmett was pressuring, but Michael Johnson had better footwork. He was landing more shots. He was busting Emmett up a little bit. Josh Emmett, to me, had become very predictable throughout this fight. He was moving forward, not even really cutting angles very much. He would do a shuffle with his head where it was bob, overhand, or it would be a 4 count, bob, overhand. And, it seemed like Michael Johnson was in a rhythm and he caught on to that and he had everything under control. But then with about 46 seconds left in the fight or so, Josh Emmett lands that overhand right that he had been setting up throughout the entire night. He was going low with some takedown feints, and I say takedown feints because he would just snatch Michael Johnson's leg, not really trying to finish the takedown. He kept trying to make him think low and come with the overhand right, which is, a classic wrestler move. I think is the best example of using that tactic where he used to get you thinking about him. He would come with the overhand right. And and he was keeping Emmett at bay, it only takes one time for it to get through. And that's exactly what happened with Josh Emmett. And then Josh Emmett making the cardinal mistake of asking for a fight night bonus and did not get one. I thought it was a pretty clear understanding now that you don't ask for them, because if you ask for them, you're not going to get them. Make a good call out, cut a promo, put your coat on, and get out of the office. And I guess Josh Emmett didn't get that memo, but man, Michael Johnson starched pretty good. Give me your thoughts on this fight, Jeff.
Bill, I actually thought that I agree with you. I think Michael Johnson was doing a really, really good job, but I think that Josh Emmett was really smart in that third round, because Michael Johnson, when Emmett went for that overhand right, he ducked under like really, really low, and it kind of looked like that overhand right was going to hit Johnson in the body. So Johnson kind of dropped his left hand a little bit, and that's when Emmett landed that right hand right on the jaw. I think I saw Michael Johnson's tooth fly out of his mouth.
There was something that flew out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a tooth. But yeah, dude, up until that point, I wasn't seeing anything special from Emmett. He was kind of just like feinting a lot, not really trying to finish the fight. So it was just really interesting. And I think that has to do with Josh Emmett's fight against not Travis Stevens, Jeremy Stevens, because Emmett actually broke his occipital bone, which was really dangerous. I was hearing some interviews with him, and he said that his eye was actually in danger of like popping out of his head and getting hurt from the fracture. Because it's so close to the eye. And if I were Emmett, I'd just be so nervous to go back in there after an injury like that. I don't know how sparring was for him. So there was a lot of things that Josh Emmett was doing that he wouldn't normally do up until that whole injury. Because Emmett, his first fight in the UFC, he just went for it. He was not scared to put pressure on his opponent and move forward, and he ended up getting a knockout in his debut in the UFC. So, I don't know how much that played into his mentality, but I feel like Michael Johnson probably could have taken advantage a little bit more. I felt like in the beginning, especially that first round, they respected each other just a little too much. I would have liked to see Johnson go forward a little bit more. But great fight from both of these guys. There was a lot of technique here. It was a really technical matchup. And, there were parts of it that may have seemed boring, but that's because they were feeling each other out, trying to time their shots, trying to look for a really, really powerful punch. So it was a good fight overall.
Yeah, two guys who were really trying to utilize their boxing. You didn't see a whole lot of kicks mixed in there. You didn't see a whole lot of takedown attempts, from two very solid wrestlers. All you saw were those feinting attempts from Josh Emmett, and then Michael Johnson trying to argue that he wasn't out. And he said to Keith Peterson, "I wasn't out," and Keith Peterson just looked at him sideways and said, "Yeah, you were." I love Keith Peterson, Jeff. I think he's my favorite referee, because we talk a lot of shit about the referees when they mess up, but we don't talk about Keith Peterson because he's usually pretty consistent in there. I feel like he always catches a lot of the fouls. John Anik calls him no nonsense Keith Peterson. He does seem like a very serious guy in there, but he does his job, and we never talk about him because he's good at it. If the referee is good, you're not supposed to notice them in there. And that's why Keith Peterson is good. A very excellent ref. I think he's the golden standard in my book. Let's move on to the straw weights. Michelle Waterson with a dominant victory over Karolina Kowalkiewicz. And asking for the title shot, I don't see how they can deny her. But they probably can. A very convincing win over a very top and game opponent in Karolina Kowalkiewicz, who also didn't seem like the same fighter to me since that knockout she took to Jessica Andrade in her last fight. She definitely seemed a lot more tentative. But full credit to Michelle on the feet and on the ground. Jeff, did I lose you?
Yeah, you broke up a little bit with the Wi-Fi for a second, but we're back. I'm sorry, Bill, I didn't hear your question.
Your thoughts on the Michelle Waterson Karolina Kowalkiewicz fight?
Oh, this dude, for me, this was fight of the night, man. I thought that Michelle Waterson made a statement in the strawweight division. Just dominated Karolina Kowalkiewicz everywhere. The stand-up, it was all Michelle Waterson, mixing it up with those karate kicks that she's known for. On the ground, she was going for submissions. Karolina Kowalkiewicz did a really good job of getting out of a pretty tight armbar in, I want to say it was the second round. I want to say at the end of the second round. But dude, I think Michelle Waterson, I think it was Daniel Cormier who said this was the best fight that Michelle Waterson has put on. I find it hard to argue. She looked like she was dominant everywhere, and after that submission loss to Rose Namajunas, I was a little concerned that maybe the UFC would take Michelle Waterson just a little bit more time to get back up in the rankings. But last night's performance was just so defining for her in the strawweight division. We've seen her dominate in the atomweight division, former Invicta champion at 105. So, Bill, I think it's her time. I think that after the title is wrapped up at the moment. I think there's a title fight coming up for the women's strawweight title.
Yes, Jessica Andrade.
Yeah. So, so after that fight, I think you got to give it to Michelle Waterson. I think she gets the winner of that. As for Karolina Kowalkiewicz, I think maybe a step down in competition. She's been fighting a lot of top women in this strawweight division. Just give her a fight for her to get her confidence back a little bit. But overall, man, I'm a big Michelle Waterson fan. I love watching her go in there and get to work. And just last night was just whole different level. I think Kowalkiewicz is no slouch. She's a very tough fight for anybody. And Michelle Waterson went in there and just pieced her up, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was great. She's definitely tightened up her grappling, and she's added some wrestling as well. Her wrestling looked good. She's always been good at that head and arm throw, which is dangerous because if you overextend on that, you get your back taken very easily. Mm-hmm. But she pulls it off well, and she had some nice wrestling takedowns as well. For Karolina Kowalkiewicz, I think maybe Tisha Torres could be next. They're both on a bit of a losing skid, so it could be like a loser leaves town kind of deal with those two. I think that'd be an interesting matchup. I don't see who else you could give a title shot to besides Michelle Waterson. I think it's probably more enticing if Jessica Andrade were to win against Rose Namajunas, just because that's a fresh matchup.
Yeah.
But who knows what they'll do? They may pull. Maybe they'll give it to Mackenzie Dern, like while she's pregnant. You never know. That's how unpredictable the UFC is.
Yeah.
So, speaking of unpredictable, Paul Craig coming away with the last-minute submission over Kennedy Nzechukwu, and this was, man, Paul Craig was taking a beating in this one. He was pulling Kennedy on top of him and just taking a pounding in this one, and he kept pulling guard, man. I cannot condone pulling guard anywhere, but especially in MMA where you can get beat up like this. It was a bold move by Paul Craig. He still seemed like he was a little bit dazed when that fight ended. It was all muscle memory that he was able to pull off that triangle. He used a really nice setup, and he did it twice in a row. He used the scissor sweep, and when Kennedy pushes weight, push himself right into a triangle. So it didn't work the first time. He did it again, and he was able to make Kennedy fall right into that triangle. It was a pretty nice setup. That's an old school sweep into a triangle setup where, you go really hard for the sweep, and then when you don't get it and they push back into you, the triangle is right there. So credit to Paul Craig for that move, but man, you got to be concerned with the way he fought this fight, pulling guard and taking a beating like that, and trying, he was trying really hard for the takedown, but he was also making the mistake of holding on to single legs for too long, which is something we've been talking about a lot lately too, Jeff. You hold on to that leg and you don't have a hand to defend those nasty elbows. And luckily he wasn't knocked out with any of those, but you're getting your brain rattled around in there a bit. Give me your thoughts on this performance by the Bear Jew, Paul Craig.
Yeah, dude. In that second round, it was definitely all Kennedy. I think the first and third round up until the finish as well. So Paul Craig definitely needed the finish here. Bill, I can't condone his fighting style, man. Just letting someone get on top of you like that in MMA, like you said, not the most effective strategy. He was getting really tough ground and pound from Kennedy, and I felt like Kennedy was doing a good job of getting out of those submissions in the first couple of rounds. But then Paul Craig, just using the fundamentals of jiu-jitsu, man. You pull your opponent one way, and when they push, you pull a different way. So that I really enjoyed that finish. It was like we said, the fundamentals of jiu-jitsu were just there. When your opponent pushes, you pull. When they pull, you push. So really good stuff. Good finish for Paul Craig, but I'd like for him to work on his stand-up a little bit more. On the feet, it was all Kennedy in that fight.
Yeah, and I feel like every time he wins a fight, he's saying like, "Oh, my stand-up's getting better," and like, but I mean, you can't be that far behind the 8 ball to where you're pulling guard. After how many fights has this guy had in the UFC? I could easily check, but I'm not going to, just because I want to move on. But yeah, I agree. Work on the striking, work on the wrestling. If the ground game is your thing, then be able to force it there. Don't just flop on your back and hope for the best. Let's move back to featherweight talk. Sodiq Yusuff and Sheymon Moraes. I do not know how these two gentlemen make 145 pounds. They look like two welterweights in there, and they look like big welterweights, not just like Anthony Pettis moving up and fighting a welterweight, like Tyron Woodley. Like these guys are fucking built. I don't know how they're making this weight. So this was a good performance for Sodiq Yusuff. I think he's very used to coming in and just being able to knock, and he wasn't able to do that with Sheymon Moraes, who's a very experienced striker. He knows how to use his length. He knows how to use range and keep opponents away. And Sodiq Yusuff countered that by clinching a lot and holding him up against the cage and using his Muay Thai in a very effective way and getting a unanimous decision. So credit to Sodiq Yusuff. It was definitely the most he's been tested in the UFC, including on the Contender Series. So, good on him for that one. I did not catch many of the prelims, so I'm going to turn it over to you, Jeff, if there's anything else you want to cover here. And then I just have one more point on this card I want to touch on, and then we can move on.
All right, sounds good. So, Bill, I only caught 2 fights from the prelims. Kevin Holland versus Gerald Meerschaert, which, Bill, this fight was a travesty. I mean, Kevin Holland did a really good job of creating scrambles because Gerald Meerschaert was really going for a submission win in the first round. Kevin Holland did a good job of creating scrambles, but then in the second round, Gerald Meerschaert was just exhausted, and Kevin Holland, he didn't capitalize on it. He was just slapping him around a little bit and just trying to stay on top of him, but he wasn't looking for a finish. And then in the third round, they were both exhausted. I felt like Kevin Holland did enough to win the third round. And then at the end, in his interview, he started talking shit. It kind of felt like when Kamaru Usman said that 30% line.
Yeah,
that's what this fight felt like. Kevin Holland was saying, "Oh, give me someone who's going to stand and bang with me." I was slapping Gerald Meerschaert around, but it's like, dude, but the fight wasn't entertaining. You didn't blow him out of the water, so I felt like it was poorly timed.
Yeah, just a cringeworthy post-fight interview after a lackluster performance.
Yeah, that's it. That's the nail on the head. So honestly, if you don't go back and watch this fight, you're not missing out on much. But the fight you should go back and watch, and is the only other fight I saw in the prelims, was Desmond Green versus Ross Pearson. Ross Pearson's a little bit older. I feel like he should hang up the gloves, honestly. But, dude, Desmond Green was mixing it up really, really well. On the feet, he didn't look like he was having too many problems. And then in the middle of the first round, Bill, he shoots for a single leg, but instead powers through it in the follow through, uses his right foot to trip Ross Pearson's other leg that he doesn't have clinched in the single, and then turns it into a double leg. Bill, just a beautiful, beautiful takedown from Desmond Green. Then he held down Pearson with the hand on the hip and just started wailing shots on him. Ross Pearson was trying to get up, but Green's weight was on him, and he wasn't protecting his face. So Desmond Green just unloading on him, and the ref called it. So that was a really, really good fight. I like the aggressiveness of Desmond Green's takedowns. I like how aggressive his wrestling was. So this was a really, really, really good fight to watch. So if you watch nothing else on the prelims, definitely check out Green versus Pearson.
Cool. Yeah, I definitely will go back and watch that one. Yeah, Ross Pearson lost 6 of his last 7 now. So if it's not time to hang it up, probably time to move on to somewhere outside of the UFC. If fighting is really what he wants to do, he's going to have to take a big step down in competition. A great fighter who's put on some awesome performances over the years. He's super tough. He's not that old, 34 years old, but he's just been at this a long time. A lot of miles on him in the cage. So, yeah, you hate to see guys keep taking losses like this who have been around for so long. I guess they feel like there's nothing else they can do. One other point I want to touch on in this card, Jeff, and I want to be as delicate as possible with this one, and it's the Ray Borg fight. So Ray Borg, I want to be very respectful about this because he's gone through a lot with his son. Being in and out of the emergency room and medical bills, and as a parent, I can't help but empathize with him, and I can't even imagine how he's feeling with all that he has going on at home. That is something that no parent should ever have to go through. But at the same time, he missed weight twice as a flyweight, and still got that championship fight with Demetrius Johnson, which is why we didn't get to see Demetrius Johnson fight TJ Dillashaw at that time, because he wanted to give the fight to Ray Borg, who was notorious for missing weight. Even though Dillashaw, his reason for not fighting Dillashaw was that he thought he wouldn't make weight, and he wanted to have that title streak extended. So Ray Borg moves up in weight to 135, and he misses weight again, Jeff. And he had time to continue cutting, and he chose not to. He quit on the scale, and he had to give up 20% of his purse to a guy who took this fight in Casey Kenny on 2 weeks' notice, maybe, and who was able to make weight. So there were some rumblings that Casey Kenny should decline taking the 20% of Ray Borg's purse because of everything that Ray Borg has going on. And I kind of look at it the other way. I think if Ray Borg wants to really take care of his family, he's got to do his job. He's got to make weight, and then he's got to go out there and win the fight. And if he's not able to do those things, if he's got too much stress in his life to make the weight or to go out there and perform, then it's probably time to walk away from this and get a job that has like really good medical benefits or something, like a regular job, so that he can focus on his family. And I hate to put it in terms like this, but I just feel like it's something that we need to talk about. He's proven time and time again he can't make weight, and he moves up in weight against a guy who's taking the fight on 2 weeks' notice, and he misses weight again. And he's taken money out of his own pocket by doing this, and that's money that could be going towards helping his son and medical expenses and everything like that. And again, Jeff, I want to be as delicate as possible, but like, he's got to get it together, man. He's got to take care of that kid, and if fighting isn't the way to do that, he's got to figure out another way to do it. Any thoughts on this one, Jeff?
Yeah, Bill, I'm not gonna be as nice about it. Um, I mean, dude, Ray Borg, if he wants to take care of his son and his family, make the weight. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you moved up 10 pounds and you still missed weight by a pound. I think there's no excuse for this,
Mm-hmm.
especially when his opponent's taking this fight on 2 weeks' notice. And I hate to sound like a dick, but I'm going to go ahead and say this. I think Casey Kenny has no moral or any obligation to give Ray Borg that money back. I mean, that's on Borg. He's the one who missed weight.
Yeah.
So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I feel bad for Ray Borg. I'd hate, I don't like that he's going through this situation. But if it's too stressful for him, if he feels like he can't perform, then step away for a little bit. Go,
Mm-hmm.
take care of your family first, and then once that's all resolved, jump back into the octagon. But I feel that what Ray Borg is doing is not helping the cause here. So I feel bad for him, but he's still got to show up and do his job.
Yeah, for sure. Totally agree. And credit to Casey Kenny, who came over with a lot on the line here. He was a champion in LFA, and he came over to make his UFC debut on short notice, taking on a guy who had fought for the title previously in Ray Borg and coming away with the unanimous decision. I did not see the fight, but good on Casey Kenny taking that last minute fight, taking a fight against a guy who did not make weight, did not agree to the first part of the deal, and still coming away with the victory. So good for him. I know he's a tough kid. I believe he was a 2 weight class champion in the LFA. Don't quote me on that, but yeah, I need to research that a little bit more. But it's been a busy week, Jeff. What can I say? I'm doing my usual Googling. I want to call it research, but that's all it really is. So, Jeff, so much has gone on in the past couple of weeks. There's been card after card after card, and they've all been excellent. I'm looking forward to a little bit of a week off. And then you're going to be arriving here in Florida, and we've got UFC 236. This one, top to bottom, is just such an awesome card. I really can't wait for this to put it on from the first prelim and watch all the way through a spectacular main event. Now we have next week to really take a deep dive into this one, Jeff. Tell me what's really jumping off the page on this UFC 236 card, and then next week we can go one fight at a time and really take a deep dive into it.
Bill, there are a few cards that make me say what's not to like, and this is one of those cards, man. I mean, take your pick, man. Every fight on here looks so exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Everything on the main card. You have Alan Joban coming back. I like him because he used to be a model, and he's not just a pretty boy. He can get in there and fight, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Eric Anders versus Khalil Roundtree, the Holloway versus Poirier, Gastelum versus Adesanya, OSP versus Nikita Krylov. That's going to be fireworks. And then Bill, headlining, at least it looks like it's headlining the prelim card on ESPN, is your boy Matt Frivola, who you interviewed this week. I was actually listening to that episode before we came on, and it was really interesting seeing him, how he views fighting and how he's preparing for all this. So I'm excited for that one too. Wilson Hayes is on here. Max Griffin, Bilal Muhammad, and Curtis Melender are on here. I mean, this from top to bottom, this fight card just looks really exciting.
Yeah. I'm really excited to really break this one down next week and really take a close look at this main event as well, which is a rematch. So there's a lot to talk about there. There's a lot to digest. I mean, these guys have had almost 20 fights each since they last fought. So we'll definitely preview that next week. As excited as I am to talk about it, I'm also excited to not be obligated to watch MMA for a weekend. There was also one championship card this weekend, Jeff, and it was on at 6 a.m. and I just don't give a fuck, if you guys feel differently and change my mind, reach out on social media. Let me know why I should care. But I just don't. I feel like they're really trying to ram it down our throats. Like, oh, we're so much better than the UFC because we don't promote with drama and all this, and we're all about martial artists. And I'm like, all right, whatever. I get it. If I want to watch, I'll watch. Don't tell me why. you know, but if there's something I really need to see here, then like I said, change my mind. Reach out on social media, and if you want to get a hold of Jeff on social media, you can do so at animal_Wilson on Twitter. Jeff, any closing thoughts before we wrap this thing up here?
Yeah, I'm just a little surprised because I'm looking at the results of one championship. I mean, obviously Demetrius Johnson won. That wasn't going to be too surprising, but Eddie Alvarez got TKO'd on this fight card. I might have to go check that out, man.
Yeah, in the first round, the mighty have fallen.
Yeah, dude. I mean, he's been a champion in every organization he's fought in, so not the best start for him in this lightweight Grand Prix. But I'm with you, man. One championship. I'm not gonna wake up at 6 a.m. for anything. I barely wake up at 6 a.m. for work, dude. Like,
fuck that noise.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So you guys know how to get a hold of me. It's at MMA on the Rocks everywhere on the internet, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever you got. Don't forget that there was an episode before this one, episode 133, interview with Matt Steamroller Frivola. You're not going to want to miss that one. Listen to his thoughts on his upcoming fight with Jalen Turner at UFC 236. That's next week. And we'll talk a lot more alcohol next week. We left that out this week just because, I don't know, I didn't feel like it. But I got some stuff to talk to you guys about as far as that's concerned. Anyway, until next time, cheers, everybody.